Call the meeting to order. If you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Governor of the State of Illinois has declared a gubernatorial disaster proclamation in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, and all of the city of Elmhurst is covered by the disaster area. In light of the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak, the mayor of the city of Elmhurst has determined an in-person meeting for the November 8, 2021 committee meeting of the whole may not be practical or prudent in light of the disaster. All of the aldermen of the City Council participating in the November 8, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting, wherever their physical location, shall be verified and determined that they can hear one another, can hear all discussion and testimony during the meeting. Clerk Tamer, please call the roll.
Nudera.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Conquest.
Here.
Bastido.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Beremus.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Toludo.
Here.
Cahill. Absent. 13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. Moving on to item 2, public comment. Is there anyone in the audience other than those who will be participating later in the program who would like to make public comment this evening? There being none, we'll move on to item 3, approval of minutes. We're going to pass over that this evening and pick it up on the next agenda because the minutes were actually posted a little bit late, so we will add those minutes on as well as probably the ones for tonight for our next committee of the whole meeting. Agenda item 4, continued review of fiscal year 2022 budget. City Manager, do you want to take it from here?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we are pleased to have with us members of the Elmhurst Library Board and the Executive Director, as well as members of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, and Director of the Museum. But before we get to that, I would like to point out on the detailed budget review schedule, pulled a little bit of an audible today because Assistant Manager Kopp is not able to be here tonight to present the budgets that fall within his purview. And so what we did was moved up some of the budgets that we didn't get to in the last meeting. And so after the library and the museum, we'd like to move to administration, elected officials, the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners, finance, legal claims, and go through those as far as we can get tonight before the time cutoff. So just a little bit of a change on that. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to the members from the library.
Good evening. Sue Sadowski, President of the Library Board. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight, Mayor Levin and the City Council. Some new people here for us to meet tonight. I'd like to begin by introducing our Library Director, Mary Beth Harper. She's here tonight with me. Before you tonight, you have our operating budget, and I'm very pleased to announce that the library building bonds are paid off, and the Library Board of Trustees approved a budget for the first time in 20 years that does not include debt service repayment. So we're very happy. Little did I know when I was coming in at the beginning, and here I am now, still sitting here after they're paid off. So that's a good feeling. The 2022 levy is now reduced by $1.3 million. In preparing for the debt payoff, the board commissioned an architectural and engineering firm to conduct a comprehensive capital reserve study in 2020. The library building and its components were evaluated for aging and replacement. Overall, the building is in excellent shape, and we've been excellent stewards of taking care of it. It's been lovingly cared for by a great staff. However, we're carefully planning for the maintenance and upkeep of an aging building to ensure the viability of this valuable community resource. Moving forward, increases to the building maintenance line will account for repair and replacement of some of the major components of the building. Additionally, we just replaced the parking lot in 2021. This major project went very smoothly with the help of city staff and our understanding patrons. Other plans for 2022 include embarking upon the strategic planning process. The board has hired a strategic planning firm to collect information from the community through surveys, focus groups, and stakeholder meetings. The goal is to gather information from staff, patrons, and the board and write up a plan which provides not only strategic direction for the next 5 years, but it also includes a thoughtful analysis into what our community wants from the library in the desire to become a more equitable, inclusive, and diverse organization. Further, we are still seeing the effects of the 2020 pandemic like everyone else. Patron visits to the library and materials checkouts are not back to pre-pandemic levels. However, things are looking up. Community organizations are beginning to request meeting rooms, patrons are partaking of programs in the library, and our study rooms are often full. The overall feeling is that we may need to change the way we do things to accommodate patrons in their new normal. But we have the ability and the capacity to do that. This is an excellent time for us to be writing a strategic plan and asking our community what they want. We hope to gain valuable insight into what the community expects from the library after all the changes that have occurred in 2020 and 2021. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for helping make the library such a valuable resource to the community. Successful organizations always take a group effort. We need the skills of the staff to make the library an inviting and interesting place. We need the Library Board of Trustees to provide guidance and support the staff. And we also need the residents of Elmhurst to continue to enjoy their library. So on behalf of the board and in the spirit of teamwork and support, I'd like to thank you all again, Mayor, City Council, and the City Manager and the rest of the city staff who work with us on a daily basis. And we are now free to take some questions or comments from everyone.
Thank you, President Sadowski. Mary Beth, do you have any comments? Are we going directly into the...
No comments. Nope.
All right, very good. Open for discussion to the council. Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the first time I've gone through this process, so forgive me if this question's been addressed elsewhere, but I saw in the budget items we reviewed last time that we saw increases in proposed line items called out for specific items that increased. I forget the exact percentage that called that out, but I'm just curious why those would not be detailed in the budget here for the library, increases over a significant percentage in the projected budget as opposed to this year's.
Okay, so can you tell me which lines you're talking about there, and I can explain to you?
So for example, it would be 40-73 and page 176.
So
in terms of computer supplies, and I know you've spoken a little bit about building repairs and
So
maintenance.
that's line 4073 as we, right?
4073.
Right, right.
Correct. But I think before I wanted to go into specifics, I just wanted to understand,
Sure.
When the library constructs the budget, how do they view, talking about those increases or what's needed there to justify the difference?
Sure.
And forgive me, City Manager, what's the percentage that triggers those in our budget typically?
5%.
And $2,500.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Alderman, if I may, we have not traditionally asked the library to fill those out in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
That's why you're not seeing them here.
Right. But what I can tell you is those are all projects. So I have them all detailed here. And yes, you're absolutely right. So for instance, in 3004, which is Auto Circ system, there's an increase of $25,000. And that is because we will be leasing a new sorter and self-check system. It is now 9 years old, and the company that we originally purchased it from, you actually had to purchase the whole equipment and the self-checks and all that, many hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now they have a leasing system. So we'll be able to lease it over 10 years, and after 10 years, when that's ready to retire, we'll just release it, which I think is a great
way to have the newest equipment, and the maintenance is all covered under that. In 3052, which is professional services, we have $55,000 extra in there. That is for consultants for the strategic planning process, which we talked about in our speech. In a couple of other lines have smaller ones. In 4073, which is the computer supplies and software line, we have $150,000 extra in there for replacement computers for this year. So our computers are now, actually they're about 10 years old, believe it or not, which is really a pretty long life cycle for computers. And our IT department head has been kind of nursing them along, but it's time to replace them all, and that would include the replacement of all the public computers and the staff computers. Then under 5001, which is building, as you mentioned, Alderman Hill, that we actually did kind of talk about that briefly in our speech, but that includes a lot of capital projects, replacement of the carpeting upstairs for the whole second floor at around $280,000, because we did not replace that when we did the renovation upstairs, which is now actually 8 years ago. $35,000 to replace the fire alarm system, $15,000 for outside metal painting, $10,000 to repaint the teen room, and then under furniture, which is 8001, we have replacement of some major furniture, replacement chairs upstairs at about $75,000, teen furniture at $30,000, and more replacement chairs upstairs at $20,000. And those chairs we're replacing were not replaced during the renovation upstairs either. So those are the lines that have some of the major increases to them.
Thank you. And if I could have one more follow-up question.
The floor is yours.
To speak to the materials budget, I think if I understand 40-03 on page 176,
Yeah.
that you made that a lump materials budget that was broken down subsequently when you budgeted for digital content, monographs, and other materials there. So you don't necessarily break that down until the costs from the vendors come in.
Absolutely, and it's funny that you use monographs. I forgot you had a library background, right? So anyway, yes, we used to have all of our materials broken down into separate accounts, and we combined them all into one materials account to give us more flexibility, especially where digital materials are concerned. But we definitely keep all those accountings ourselves within. We have all the breakdowns down to much even more detailed than these major sections we used to have here.
And so the final question, you talked a little bit about the decrease in circulation and foot traffic. So, but you're projecting an increase in those budgets. Is that just to offset vendor costs or materials cost increases? Or why are you forecasting an increase there with decreased
For the materials budget?
Yes.
Mostly it's going to be in digital materials, of course. And digital materials are expensive, and they are not, I've explained this to I'm sure you know this, but we're not able to one loan per one digital book. So it's not like you buy one digital book and can loan it to 100 people at a time. It's just like a physical item. And also, the books expire after a certain number of uses, just as they would if we were circulating a book that circulated 100 times. It would probably wear out and we'd have to replace it. So the digital materials, even though they physically don't wear out, the publishers want to make money, so of course they're going to need to be replaced. So most of it is in digital materials, and we did take that budget down last year in anticipation of not spending too much this year, so we kind of just brought it back up to where it was before, around that line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Alderman Dunn.
Yes, thank you. Just a question on page 171, your charges for service. I know that you've done away with fines, I think, so they went from like 112,000 in 2019, but then it was pretty low last year, but that was probably because of COVID. So now you're at about half of that. So what are your charges for services if you're not fining people?
Oh, so charges for service also includes the replacement of materials. So although we're not fining people anymore for overdue materials, which is actually turning out to be a really good thing, and it's cutting down on work time too, staff time. So they are still charged if they lose items. So for instance, you lose a book, whatever it is, you lose whatever, you do have to replace that cost of that item. And then we also charge for a couple of different fees. If something is lost, we charge a recataloging fee and things like that. Let me see what else is under my charges for service line. I think our copier revenue is in there also. So copier revenue is, we actually brought that up a little bit, around $45,000 projected for this year. It used to be 35,000, but we're seeing we're expecting more of that. And then some fees, library fees, which tend to be meeting room charges for non-for-profits,
Gotcha.
for-profit companies and stuff. So there are still a few more charges in there, and we'll probably bring in around $5,000 in lost materials, stuff like that.
Glad to hear the removal of fines, although you don't have that funding source. It is saving staff administrative time, and so that's good to hear.
Definitely, and generating goodwill. So people really did not like to have to deal with fines, patrons at all. So, and we're getting the materials back. That's all good.
Other discussion or questions? A lot of Alderman Hill.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. One more question I
Sure.
forgot to ask at the time. I also saw under wages full-time that you had projected a wage increase. So is that due to additional staffing or using existing staff? And
So-
that's on page 175.
Yes, and basically what that accounts for are two, I believe I've got two positions that are moving from part-time up to full-time. And then, of course, a raise, a normal raise. So that's basically what that is accounting for, yeah.
And can you speak a little bit to, again, with maybe some diminished traffic in the library a little bit and some reduction possibly in services? I'm not sure, but if you had to do that, maybe how do you see that in terms of like future growth or resumption of normal activity and traffic going forward? Is that maybe what it's based on?
Yeah, and we are significantly reduced in our staff right now. We are down from what used to be when I first came here, 150, and then we were about 120, and then during the Great Resignation, what they're calling it, the pandemic, we're down to about 100 staff members. However, we have brought on more full-time staff members because we were having sort of a revolving door of part-time staff members, and hiring on full-time staff members just gave us so much more stability. The one thing I can tell you too is we are expecting a couple of retirements this next year that I already know about, planned retirements. So one of the people that is part-time will be moved up to full-time, not to take over that department head position, it's actually a department head position, but to be within that department, and I'll probably combine two departments. So there's one move there, and then another move was we had a person who was like 32, 34 hours part-time, and we decided when that person left that it was just going to be more beneficial for the position because it was working with the schools to hire on a full-time position for that. So although the traffic is down right now, I am expecting and hoping that that will pick up again. I think once people can come in the building and not have to wear masks again, once all of our programming is back up and running, I do expect that to increase. And I also think that, I don't usually look too forward to strategic planning. Sometimes it's a long, arduous process, but I think we're at a really great point right now. We're really lucky to be able to be doing our strategic plan this next year, because if we had done it the year before COVID, we'd probably have to redo everything anyway. So it's going to be really interesting to see what our community wants from us. And I guess I'm kind of expecting or thinking that going out into the community is going to be a bigger deal now than probably staying within our building and expecting people to come to us. So we will need staff to be doing stuff like that. I think that's, again, I'm really looking forward to collecting information from our community and seeing what our community wants. And I think that we are down staff. I'm expecting more people to come in, but we'll never be at the levels we were at before with staff because we have improved efficiencies elsewhere. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Toledo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight. One of the questions that we talk a lot about on the Finance Committee for the city is the implications of some of the recent federal money that has been approved from the result of COVID and some of the things that the current administration is doing. like recently, the infrastructure bill that was passed. How has the library benefited from any of the money, the CARES Act, for example, if at all? And how does the library foresee any benefits from some of the recent legislation that was passed, or some of the future proposed legislation? And my third part to that question is, if it's grant type of stuff, do you go directly to agencies, or do you go through the city for some of those grant applications? Thank you.
So the CARES Act, if we submitted via the city. I think they collected our information and we submitted along with the city. So I haven't seen anything from that yet. The infrastructure, I really don't know. I don't know how that would pertain to us, but I can guarantee you that if there is something that we can write a grant for that would pertain to us, we would do it. So I don't know what that's going to be. We fall under the library and museum. I'm sorry, I'm losing the acronym for that, but there is one.
IMLA.
MLS, thank you very
Everybody
much.
knows.
So we fall under sort of that grant category, so I'm not sure. I don't know what they'll be. If we do have an aging building and we have a whole bunch of infrastructure projects ourselves that'll be coming up, I don't know how those will relate to buildings like ours. I imagine more information will be coming out about that, but I can assure you if there is stuff, we will definitely pursue it.
Thank you.
And then what was your third part? I'm sorry.
How do you apply? But you can
We applied to the city.
touched
Yes,
on
yes,
it. Yeah.
yes. For the CARES Act, we applied for them. For the other grants, the Museum and Library Services grants, we apply for those ourselves.
Thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Alderman Brennan and Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question as hopefully we come out of COVID very soon. With the library and the footprint, have you had to do any physical reconfiguration of the library to factor in social distancing? And is that a short-term challenge for you, or is it something that'll be long-term that will stay after COVID?
So I'm really hoping it won't be long-term, but we did initially when we reopened up after everybody had closed and we were welcoming people back into the building, we definitely, took away all chairs so nobody could sit or socially distance, all that stuff, one chair at a table. We put up all the Lucite screens that everybody else put up. So we made all those adjustments. We're slowly removing all those adjustments, as things get back to a more normal state. As far as some of the things I think long-term COVID that we may see, it's probably going to be some changes to our service. We moved all of our programs to virtual programming once the pandemic hit and we couldn't program in person. And what we're finding now is we're still offering programs in a hybrid model where patients can either come to the program or they can choose to attend virtually. And we're getting about half to more than half still attending virtually. So they're actually liking to attend virtually, which is news to us. We learned that through the pandemic, obviously. So I anticipate that model will continue in some form for sure. And that'll mean maybe some infrastructure improvements as far as better technology, which we've already kind of invested in some of that stuff, but to be able to live stream better or set up cameras and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. I think, we've done a lot of stuff like getting stuff out to patrons, craft kits. We loan more materials. A lot of the stuff in our makery that we weren't loaning before, some of the bigger equipment we're now loaning because people want to take it home and use it. And the digital materials, of course, bulking those up. So not so much with our building as much as with some of our services. And I'm also really interested, I've been interested in this even before the pandemic, but to talk a little bit about delivery with our community. Not that we would hire vehicles or anything, that we would work vehicles, but there's all kinds of delivery services and people want everything now and they want it right on their doorstep. So stuff like that, I think, is going to be impactful possibly for us in the future. As far as the building goes, we have a lot of space and people definitely, I think, feel comfortable using our space. The meeting rooms are still very, very popular, and they were one of the first things that remained popular because people could go into those separate rooms and host their meetings and feel like they were contained. We did just put in more of those, but we certainly have a lot of space, which allows people to distance more
Space out.
naturally, which is good.
Great, thank you.
Sounds like you solved your parking lot problem.
We did solve our parking. Yeah,
Alderman Deuter.
we did.
You talked a little bit about the strategic planning that's in your budget for next year, and you talked about the public input portion of that process. If you know, can you describe some of the ways that you're anticipating getting that public input?
Yes, so we already hired a firm. They will be we'll have a kickoff meeting in January, and then the plan the information gathering from the community will take place all throughout the spring, and the plan will be written, culmination will be in the fall. So one of the things that was really important to me was that the group that's performing this is going to reach out to our community in a survey format, which is fine. You do surveys all the time too. Surveys are great if they're written the right way. But I also wanted focus groups, which I think are really important because I really hope that we'll get some great information when people are able to have a conversation. So small focus group, stakeholder interviews. So I'm not sure if some of you may be asked to interview, phone interviews and things like that. So what I'm really looking forward to is getting some of that more in-depth, hopefully, information from our community as opposed to just a survey. You know, you can get some good information from surveys too, but those are going to be our main forms. They'll also be working with the board and with the staff. We wrote a strategic plan 6 years ago, and we just did it in-house because we really knew where we were going at that point. We were in the middle of several large renovations, and it was like, well, we have our next 5 years pretty much planned out. So we did a survey, but we didn't do any of the focus groups or anything. So I think it's really time for us to hear from the community and make sure we're hearing from them as fully as possible. I know the Park District did a strategic plan a couple of years ago, and they did a lot of interviewing because I know I was asked to interview for that too and provide feedback. And I did like the process they had. It felt very in-depth to me. So I'm hoping for something similar to that.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And we'll be planning too, so someone may call you.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Additional questions? Alderman Honquist.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question. As you start planning for this, do you think that the library facility itself, that you'll end up with additional or extra space as you kind of consolidate some of the programs, especially if you start pushing out?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there'll be, now that you're not so much in the book business, physical book business, is there space available in the building, you think, in the future?
It's a really good question, and we've thought about that too. And as collections do start to, we have a big CD collection right now, music CD. That's not going to be here probably for, I don't know when that's going to go. It still checks out, but slowly it's decreasing for sure. Yeah, it's going to go. And, magazines and things like that, these collections are all going to start decreasing. What I can tell you is pre-pandemic, and I can't imagine that some of this isn't really going to come back, the library as a space was really, really important. Meeting rooms, community just loves the meeting rooms. They're clamoring to get into those meeting rooms. Places for people to work who work from home to work in the library, really a big deal. It's tutoring. Tutoring is big. Just coming and sitting and having a second space. One of my favorite things, and I hate to keep saying this pre-pandemic, was to walk around and just look at the different uses for the library that weren't we're here to check out materials usage. It was a group of people knitting in the study room, or two gentlemen that used to come every single day and play chess. Somebody just used us to use the stairs because they had a stroke and they needed to do stairs, and they had a caregiver with them. It was all okay, but they used our stairs for that. That's just a really that's a very different use for a public library. But the building was a really important, more of a community center, and I'm really hoping we get back to that. So as we get rid of some of these collections, and definitely spaces are going to open up, I do envision making those spaces useful to the community in whatever way they need. So I think, again, the strategic planning process is going to be really great. And when we did shut down the building, and then when we reopened the building, and it was a grab-and-go model where patrons could only come in and grab their materials and get out of the building, we had so many people who wanted to work from home at our building. They were home working, and they had kids at home, and they had meetings they had to host. And we actually contracted out with one of the local groups that took over the Red Arrow and provided space for people because we couldn't do it during the pandemic. So I'm really hoping that as collections decrease, space can be repurposed, and it will be, again, the space in the community that people can come to either get away from what they need to get away from and do work, or sit and relax, or come with their kids. That was another big, huge, meeting place, was that kids area. So crowded that we had to increase the space. So I think there's uses for some of those spaces, but I think that you ask a really good question, and I think all libraries are thinking about that, and have been for a while. But one thing I can tell you is that people thought that the physical book was going to just be, gone by now. That was predicted 10 years ago, and it isn't. And the usage statistics on people checking out physical materials or books are decreasing like this, not like this. Now the CDs, the music CDs are falling off like that. But the book is not. The book is actually not. So I don't think we'll have as big a collection, especially in the nonfiction area, but we're not getting rid of fiction. People still want it. So, definitely will be reduced. But I'm hoping we can reopen up those spaces for the community. What we will never need, or right now, what I can predict possibly from my standpoint, is a larger building. So we have a great building, a great size, and more meeting room spaces, possibly more study areas and places for people to co-work and stuff like that, maybe, is in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Alderman Bramus, brother, do you have any questions?
Not, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Others? I just had, are you maintaining your 5-star status?
We hope so. Yeah.
All right.
Well, who knows what's going to happen this next year, right?
Yeah.
The data is from like a couple of years ago, so yeah, I hope so, Scott.
Excellent. All right. Last call on all this softball stuff with the library. Alderman Brennan?
Thank you. Alderman Honquist was too shy to ask us. Do you still have 8-track tapes?
We don't, but we have albums. We have vinyl.
But we have a museum group.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. Vinyl made a big comeback, and we have a pretty substantial vinyl collection, and we even lend out turntables. So, but if the 8-tracks ever come back again, we'll get them.
All right. I don't want him to feel old, but I remember 4 tracks. So,
I was going to say four songs.
Alderman Nudera.
Is it possible that one of the rooms, as the facilities repurposed, that can become a studio for podcasts?
We have that. We do, yeah. So we have that upstairs. It's called the Creative Studio, and I would be more than happy to give you a tour. And we have people who can help you with the equipment, and we have great equipment up there. In fact, the E-Town, Lowdown, they did a segment or 2 out of our area. So, yep.
You didn't even talk about the extraordinary things.
Yeah, we have that collection, and we check out a lot of equipment like that too in our Library of Extraordinary Things collection.
Before I call on Alderman Hill again, the director did say that, particularly I was pointing out that we have a number of new aldermen, and she did say if you ever want to stop by and meet directly with her and see a little bit more about the library, you're welcome to do so. Alderman Hill.
Yeah, please.
And you do give a great tour. I've been on that, so thank you. I haven't had one with you, but by your
Well, I'd be
staff,
more
so.
than happy, yeah.
As we talked, I again was reminded of one more thing. I know that a number of years ago you backed out of the research, the library backed out of the
Swan.
research sharing Swan Consortia. And as materials prices have gone up, I know you're with an alternate consortia right now, a smaller one. Lincoln, is it still called that?
LinkedIn, yeah.
So have you revisited the idea of more resource sharing partnerships as a way to save on costs there?
It actually did not save us any costs because we were sending out 8,000 items a month to other libraries. We're now sending out about 1,200 a month. We can still get our hands on all the materials that people want either through our smaller consortium, which again we're only loaning about 1,200 a month and taking in about 1,200, or we can go through through WorldCat and get things from anywhere. But when we were with Swan, we were sending out about 8,000 items a month and taking in maybe 5,000 a month. So the work that was involved in gathering and processing 8,000 items and sending them to other libraries a month was quite substantial. And we also were sharing a catalog, obviously a big, huge shared catalog. So the cost of a book, I always contend that the cost of a book to lend back and forth and physically be driven with vans to another location, I can order it in cheaper, more than I can get it from Homewood Public Library and have them drive up something. And we were loaning a lot of very popular ephemeral materials. It wasn't research-based stuff that you couldn't get someplace. And also that model included loaning materials that we had here in our library that might have been checked out at another library. There was no check and balance on how things, and I don't know, maybe you know this and I'm sorry if but there was no check and balance on how items were flowing. So for instance, if my item could be at Homewood Library, while my patron could be getting that item from Frankfurt Library, whatever, yeah. So with the system we're in now, if the library owns the item, then the patron has to wait for the item to come back to this library. We can only get things out of the system that we don't physically own here. And all the new stuff is stuff we're going to get. That doesn't loan anyway. And also, we used to have to really protect our resources and make things new in order for them not to be gone at these other libraries. I'm getting way too into this. But the other thing with Swan was we were a big, big library, and there were lots of very, very small libraries. So we were carrying the weight and supporting a lot of the small libraries. And a lot of our stuff was gone all the time. So it was a whole bunch of things, so it really wasn't a cost saver for us at all. In fact, we've cut down on staffing in our CERC budget for sure by being out of the consortium. And I think there's a place for a consortium like that, especially for the smaller libraries, but it was a very unequal. We're in a consortium now where almost all the libraries are either bigger than us or our size. So we're not being drawn on too much, nor are we drawing on them too much. It's a very equal relationship. We're taking in about 1,200 items a month. We're lending out about 1,100 or so, not this unequal imbalance. And 8,000 is a lot of items to be lending. That's physically someone from staff getting all those items off the shelf, marking them into some sort of a checkout, putting them in bins, getting them over. The vans come pick them up. When they come back, they all have to be pre-processed back in the library. So that's a lot of items. So, yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else? I want to thank you both for coming in. It's always a pleasure to have you guys share with the council what you're doing. The library is still a great resource, and we look forward to another great year. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for everything you do, and the city staff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Certainly.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we have Peggy Babiar, who is the president of the Heritage Foundation, and Dave Oberg to give an update on what the foundation's up to, and also Dave will review the museum's budget.
Peggy, do you want to, I see a number, I think they're all board members behind you. Do you want to introduce your board members to the council?
Would you like me to?
Yeah, I recognize them. If you,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have Kathy Jordan here, Michael Cicero, Jean Baker, and Yina Yu, who are current board members.
Thanks all for coming out. Proceed.
Is it okay to take our mask off?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That's why it's good to be president. You get to take your mask off.
I
so.
can breathe. Mayor Levin, City Manager Grabowski, and members of the City Council, thank you so much for having us here this evening as part of the city's annual budget process. My name is Peggy Babiar, and I represent the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. Our mission is to act as the fundraising arm for the Elmhurst History Museum and the One Room Schoolhouse. We support the museum by advocating and educating on their behalf, and by fundraising to support an annual grant to help the museum reach its goals and extend the impact of the city's approved budget. This past year, with help from our members, donors, and sponsors, the museum staged 3 well-received shows for all ages that drew audiences from around the region, including Together We Cannot Fail, Overcoming the Great Depression, a timely look at how Elmhurst and the western suburbs came together in the face of economic crisis. To the Moon, Snoopy Soars with NASA, a traveling exhibit from the Charles M. Schulz Museum about the connection between Schulz's beloved Peanuts character and NASA's Apollo initiative and safety programs. An ever-widening circle, Elmhurst University at 150, a celebration of the university's sesquicentennial and its continued impact on our community. In 2022, we're going to welcome 3 new exciting exhibits. One is People of the Prairie, 12,000 Years in DuPage County. Eat Your Heart Out, Iconic Chicagoland Foods, and In Pursuit of Happiness, Immigrants of Our Communities. Although these past 22 months have been challenging, the museum has continued reaching out to our community with a variety of in-person and online programs. Some of the most popular programs included a living history performance featuring Leslie Goddard as First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt in support of Together We Cannot Fail. Overcoming the Great Depression, a production of Orson Welles' radio play of War of the Worlds, in partnership with the Green Man Theater Troupe. And a jazz concert on the lawn featuring the music of Vince Giraldi, plus the debut of the new History Museum app featuring historically themed tours of our community and gallery guides. With a temporary suspension of school field trips, the school marm made her way into classrooms with virtual programs to bring much-needed resources to teachers and families, and online programs reach patrons of all ages. Recently, 2 successful events were held. The 6th annual Beer Fest, held on September 18th, brought over 1,000 guests and raised a record amount, serving over 72 surrounding communities and 70 sponsors. A 19th century rules baseball game was held at Elmhurst University, celebrating homecoming and pitting a City of Elmhurst team against the Elmhurst University faculty, staff, and alums. And I'm sorry to report that the City of Elmhurst did not win that day. What makes the museum excellent programming, outreach, and award-winning success possible? The support of the city and its residents, the support of major exhibit donors, and the Heritage Foundation. Our biggest support comes from our director and staff of the Elmhurst History Museum. Without them, none of this would be possible. Elmhurst is fortunate to have such a dedicated staff at the museum, and on its behalf and the behalf of the foundation, we thank you for your ongoing support of this jewel in our community. And we welcome all of you to become members of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, President Babier.
All right, thank you, Peggy. And thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight, and thank you for your steadfast support during what is certainly the most challenging period I've faced in the museum community as well. That first exhibit, Together We Cannot Fail, really hit home for me this past year, and we appreciate all you've done. I want to follow up on a couple of things that Peggy said, and then I'll ask if there are any questions about the budget, and I'll go through a couple of items as well. Last year at this time, I was here to share that we had shifted to a wide variety of different virtual and online programming. Pre-recorded programs, Facebook Live gallery tours, we had tried just about everything. And I shared with you a number. Last year at this time, we had 160,414 unique engagements shifting to a lot of that online programming. We're at 166, 755 this year to date, week to week. So the online stuff keeps working for what it's worth. We're reaching new audiences, and I think even after the pandemic is done, we're going to continue to do some online gallery guides and tours. There's just great opportunity to reach a lot of expatriates. You can virally share a lot of this stuff online, and it works out very well. We are not to the record-breaking in-person attendance we had in 2018 and 2019 for obvious reasons. We're still in the grips of this pandemic. But I am pleased to say that in-person attendance and on-site attendance is up 52% over last year. So we're seeing people come back. And even better, I have to say, last week we had something, if it wasn't for the masks, I would almost think we are operating in normal times. Jess was doing outreach programs in the classrooms on Tuesday. We had 3 classes of kids over at the quarry, and we were teaming up with them to do a history of the quarry. By Thursday, we had scouts back on premises doing badge workshops again. Thursday night, we hosted a chamber after hours. Friday, back on the road to give a program on Elmhurst history to a Rotary group. So this stuff is starting to come back. Things are starting to ease, and I'm really looking forward to next year. Just a couple of highlights. I want to talk about those 3 major exhibits we're planning for next year. The first one, People of the Prairie, 12,000 Years in DuPage County. This is going to be an archaeology-driven exhibit. I'm very excited about this. The communities we called Elmhurst and Cottage Hill represent only 2% of human habitation in this part of the world. And so it's going to be very exciting to tell those stories, and it links very strongly to curriculum as well. So we see this as a tremendous opportunity to keep engaging with our teachers, with our students, and develop more in-person programming, and we're going to spin off an outreach program out of this as well. So even after the exhibit closes, there's going to be a lasting effect for it. The summer exhibit, Eat Your Heart Out, Iconic Chicagoland Foods. We had planned to do that actually summer of 2020, and we realized that a culinary exhibit that would involve tasting tours and all kinds of fun foodie things in the summer probably wasn't going to be in the cards during the depths of the pandemic. And so we tabled it for a year. I'm very excited about the work that's being done on this. We're going to be doing a major community picnic on our grounds. We're going to be doing some progressive meals around town. We're going to have a lot of fun with this and bring in some kind of a recognizable culinary historian to kind of kick this thing off too. And then going into fall, and this last exhibit is going to go into winter, our last exhibit, In Pursuit of Happiness, looking at the history of immigration in Elmhurst, in surrounding communities in western DuPage County. This one, again, links very strongly to school curriculum, and we're confident that as we get into fall and beyond, we're going to see a lot more field trips picking back up. This one links so strongly to curriculum. I'm very excited about its possibilities for it and looking forward to the growth there. I do want to call attention to a couple of items in our budget very quickly where they are very different from what we normally ask for. And those are, what's that? Oh, yeah. So let's take a look at page 152. Just to begin with here, I do want to look at line item 30-60, Conservation of Artifacts. Now, we've done a couple projects you can see in the past couple of years at $4,900 and $3,000, and suddenly there's a great big number there. That's $24,000. That number is directly related to a case statement you all have as part of the packet I handed out earlier today. The Elmhurst Heritage Foundation helped us to acquire a portrait of Jane Bird Bryan, the wife of Thomas Barber Bryan. The Bryan family was tremendously influential in Elmhurst history. They're actually some of the folks that led the charge to change the name of our community to Elmhurst from Cottage Hill. They donated the land for Elmhurst University, among other things, and Mr. Bryan even served on the board of the Columbian Exposition in Chicago, the Great World's Fair. The artist who painted that portrait, G.P.A. Healy, was an internationally famous artist as well, and both of them have Elmhurst roots. They were both living here in the community. We right now have a pending grant through the National Endowment for the Arts that would pay for about half that restoration cost if it is received. If it is not received, I am very pleased and proud to say that the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is dedicated to raising all of the funds to restore that portrait, and when it is restored, it will rival, I would say, Carl Sandburg's typewriter as the most significant piece in our collection. So really, really an exciting item. If we look next to, let's see, exhibitions, we've got a pretty big number there. 60-44, that's page 153. 42,400. Now, some of that is a bit of carryover from a grant we landed, an Illinois Public Museum capital grant, to help with some upgrades to our galleries. But a lot of that is related to the 3 exhibits we mentioned, which again, the foundation has granted us money to pay for all 3 completely. In addition, there are also funds in there which the foundation is going to support for a large 83-inch touchscreen monitor to replace the much smaller monitor that's in the museum theater right now. If you come to the museum for our orientation, there's a wonderful narrative done by Bob Surratt, introduces you to Elmhurst. We're going to replace that smaller screen with a larger touchscreen where you can still watch that particular documentary, but some of you may remember that I was sharing with you last year, Dan Lund has become our in-house documentarian, our curator of collections. He's done these great 3 to 5 minute short form documentaries. They're getting a lot of views on our YouTube channel. And so some of the most popular we're going to be able to put onto that touchscreen so that if you want to know the history of the Elm skating rink, for example, or the American Legion Post, you'll be able to call that up and get a short 3 to 5 minute narrative. So it's going to give us a lot more flexibility to use that programming space. And I'm very excited about that. And then educational programs also on that page, 60-65. You can see that figure of 20,000. We are hoping to be able to swing for the fences here. We're going to see more in-person programming. We want to bring in a major culinary historian, somebody with name recognition, to kick off that summer exhibit. And again, I'm very pleased to say that the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation grant includes all of the programming planned for 2022. And then the final figure would actually be building improvements, 80-23. That's a mighty big number, $897,900. That represents 2 grants, actually. The first is one that we have already received. It's a 2-year grant cycle, and that was received just after our budget meeting last year from the state of Illinois. It's an Illinois Public Museum capital grant. That's going to pay for some major site improvements. Those include the addition of HVAC to our 3rd floor, giving us more flexible space for storage of fragile archival items, replacement of our ADA lift with something bigger and more robust, which will not only bring people into the building, but also can serve to bring our traveling exhibit crates directly up to the 1st floor gallery, so we'll be able to directly load them right into the building, which will increase safety as well. That will also pay for ADA restrooms and a power door at the education center, a second power box on our grounds. We're using our 1.1 acre campus much more effectively, and COVID has taught us how important that really is, to have that outdoor programming space. And so to be able to have more flexibility to do more outdoor programming, that'll pay for that. Removal of the parking islands, so we have more flexibility to use our parking lot space as flex space. Also, a couple of exhibit kiosks, which I referred to earlier, LED lighting upgrade, and a hanging system for the 1st floor gallery, which is going to not only increase our efficiency in using power, it's going to make the gallery look better, and the hanging system will allow us to put up traveling exhibits in about 1/5 the time we normally need to put them up currently. And then we have a second pending Illinois Public Museum capital grant. We expect to hear the announcement of that grant at the end of November or early December based on last year's model. And if we were to receive that, that is a very significant grant, but that would allow us to create some outdoor performance space and adjacent flex space using our parking lot and using permeable pavers so that we can really tie the campus together a little more and really take advantage and have some power to support a lot of those popular outdoor programs. And just as a side note, we teamed up with City Center this summer, you might have noticed, and hosted in July, August, and September some of their block-to-block concerts. And I got to say, brings a lot of people to campus. We want to be able to do more things like that. So I think I'm going to leave off there, and then if there are questions, if you'd like to know more about anything, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Director. I'll open up for the discussion or questions. Alderman Polomsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, both Mrs. Bavier and Director Olberg. Very informative, and of course your enthusiasm remains contagious. I have a question. Well, everything sounds fabulous. It's great. I'm really excited and happy to hear about all the interest in the new programs. My question sort of relates to the new programs, and we just had our library representatives here.
Are there discussions for some continued engagement with the library with some of those programs like you've done before? For example, if you've got like education related to culinary history, are there going to be, are you in discussion to have some related programming with the library?
Yeah, I would say there's a reason there's an Institute for Museum and Library Sciences, and it's because museums and libraries play very nicely together, I have to say. It's always a point of pride, I think, that just about every exhibit we have, we work together with the library to have, whether it's a connected reading of some sort, some kind of a book connected to the exhibit theme, sometimes hosting something of theirs over in the galleries where it makes sense to. So that is ongoing, that is continuing, and we definitely will be doing some joint programming again going into 2022.
Thank you.
Alderman Dunn?
Yeah, just a quick question on the revenue side. This is on page 91, 14-00. So the Museum Foundation donation is expected to go up significantly from maybe 46,000 to 84,000. Is that strictly because of the Beer Fest, the increased revenues from that?
A combination of factors, but yeah, certainly we had a very good Beer Fest this year, which is definitely allows a little more flexibility in funding. We have a robust sponsorship program that's really doing quite well as well. 13,000 in exhibit sponsorships last year, and we're well on track to hit or exceed that target again this year. But part of that too is just we had some great fundable projects that we sought foundation support for, and so I can give you a little breakdown of what that actually is too. I have that here. We're really, really thrilled that the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is going to support us at the level of $84,050 next year, and that's going to include $25,000 to underwrite the 3 major exhibits and that touchscreen I talked about before. That's including $20,000 to underwrite all of the educational programs for the year, $24,000 to underwrite the conservation of that historically significant portrait I mentioned earlier. We were able to use the Foundation's 501c3 to attract that National Endowment for the Arts grant, but whether we get it or not, we're charging forward and getting some private sector dollars to help with that. $8,000 for picnic tables and umbrellas on the ground as well, making it more friendly for families again. And we actually hope to do that this year, but it turns out supply chain issues include picnic tables. Who knew? And then, of course, some additional software upgrades and some funds towards acquisition of artifacts so that if we find another portrait like we did of Jane Bird Bryant, that's something we can go after and bring in with private sector dollars.
Thanks.
Other questions, discussion? Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to express my appreciation for both the foundation and the fundraising and the support that's given that helps to create all the programming. And second, the note about your enthusiasm, Director Oberg. There are few things that we talk about at Public Affairs and Safety that are as much fun as hearing about the museum's activities. And at the last meeting, we had an update from the foundation about Beer Fest and more detail about that event and the way that it went off and the support that it contributes. It's all really terrific to hear. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Other discussion? All right. I also want to personally thank the board. You guys are one of the hardest working groups, and you got a lot done, not just because I like the Beer Fest, but you've really stepped it up, and I personally appreciate that. Alderman Vramis, do you have anything?
Do not, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you, President, Director.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks. Sorry.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Hearing the comments, I'd invite Dave to stay back up here because nobody can make legal and claims and interfund transfers sound better than Dave Oberg.
The wrong Oberg. That's Sonawi.
Thank you both. Now we would like to move into some of the other ones that I mentioned earlier by going to page 102. which is the administration and then elected officials budget. A few things that come out of here, and I should start by saying that a lot of the salaries for this are spread over a number of the departments, so it's not necessarily indicative of everybody within the administration area. So a lot of that is spread, but a few things that do come out of this budget that I'd like to point out. The citizen survey will come out of here, and that's going to be done in the summer of 2022. I think we missed one cycle on that, but we intend to bring that back in the summer. Strategic planning, and much like the library, the Finance Committee had a robust discussion about that today. There was a proposal that was put forth that I had solicited, and the Finance Committee had asked me to go back and take a look at adding some focus groups and some survey work for that, so that the council has additional information to look at as we move into that strategic planning this winter, right after the first of the year. We have brought back the part-time communication position. This was in the budget, I believe, 2 years ago, and then it was taken out when we looked at budget reductions, and so that is back in for this year with full intent to hire that position. And the last item, and it reminded me when we talked about the beginning of the pandemic, this was the first event I think we cut and stopped, and that was the Commissioner Appreciation Event. That was one of the first ones that took a hit, and so we really look forward to bringing that back this next year. It's a wonderful event to show all of our volunteers how much they mean to us, and so we fully intend to bring that back in the next year. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And so we're presenting pages 102 through 105 at this point, or are you just doing the administration now?
That was just administration. Elected officials on page 105 is simply that. It's the stipends that you all receive for.
We've held the budget for
21
years. Yes, so. All right, administration or elected officials, Alderman Brennan.
Thanks, Mayor. City Manager, so you mentioned the communication person, part-time. So if I look at page 102, line item 10-02, is the gap between this past year and the 117 pretty much that resource, or?
That is more than what the part-time position is in the 117. I believe we spread some other salaries into this. We were talking earlier today, and so it involves just maybe a respread of other part-time positions.
I got you. Okay, so when I'm all for the communication, part-time resources. We talking like 500 hours? Roughly, what are the expectations for that person?
I believe it was about 1,000 hours.
1,000?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alderman Toledo.
Thank you. Page 103, 95-01, data processing, two-part question. I've been noticing that the 2022 projected for data processing, which I think is a chargeback to all the departments, but it seems to be elevated across all departments. So my first part of the question is that in anticipation of the ERP program and maybe some additional data processing work? And then the second part is unique to administration. Just the trend line seems strange from like 2019, 20, kind of an outlier in 2021. So do you need to follow up with your colleagues on that, or do you know the answers to those two questions?
Let me lean over to this colleague first.
Part of the ERP started here in computer software, so that's a big.
That's the capital, yeah.
Yeah, certainly a major part of the increase in the data processing line is the first phase of the ERP that is budgeted in the IT department budget. In the computer software line item on page 113, we have $998,300 in the capital, which a large portion of that is related to the ERP system, which is why there's a more significant increase. I'm sorry, the second question that you had?
Just the trend line specifically on data processing for the administration section that we're talking about. It seems like 2021 is kind of an outlier, especially compared to budget. And then it goes back, and you've answered why 2022 looks like it's going to be high, but then it goes back down. So maybe the specific question would be kind of what drove 2021 for the administration's data processing jump to budget.
Yeah, we might have to get back to, I see that the computer software line is high in the estimated 2021 in the IT budget, but I'm not sure offhand specifically what's driving that.
Yeah, please let us get back to you on that one.
We're going to call that a circle back. Anything else, Alderman Chaluto?
Oh, no.
All right.
Thank you.
And I will add here that I'll ask my own question. Is the redesigned website fall under this part of the budget or another?
I know that it is in the budget to redesign. I'm certain that at least a portion of it is within this budget as well, Mayor.
All right. And since you brought up the potential date, do you want to just throw out, even though it has nothing to do with the budget, what date we're looking at for the planning session?
Yes, we have, I'd sent earlier one weekend in January, which would have been the 28th, 29th. And since then, we've received an additional weekend that I'll be sending out tomorrow to the council, and that's the last weekend in February, the 25th and 26th, as an alternative. We had a couple of aldermen who can't make the January one, and so we're going to see if we can get the best attendance possible, and so we'll look at that. So check your calendars. We'll send an email out tomorrow. If you can confirm with us, that'd be great.
Great. Other discussion? Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. This is looking back at 2021 on page 102, line 20-04, the health insurance line that had a decrease in, a budgeted decrease in 2021. It didn't actually, you didn't realize that full decrease, but what, do you recall why that was anticipated to be?
Was the GIN reserve adjustment. Okay. It's now being spread.
So that was an adjustment that the pool that we're a part of got back to us, but now from here on out, Ryan says it's being spread over the premiums. So that was an adjustment.
Spread across the departments.
The departments, excuse me.
Yeah, what the auditors recommended.
Okay, so we cataloged it here, but the auditors are asking us to spread it across all departments.
So that was savings that was realized, but in the actual budget, it's being shown as a spread.
Yeah, it's no longer in just admin, it's spread amongst several departments.
Okay, but it did reflect savings. You said it was a paid back. What, describe again what the reduction in health insurance was. You used a word, I just missed what it was.
The reserve, right?
Yeah, it's essentially, it's a true up, yeah, at the end of the year. It's mostly an accounting exercise.
It's a debit to this account, but it's not a real savings in terms of the actual money we spent on health insurance.
Got it. It wasn't. That
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank
Correct.
you.
Thank you.
Other discussion? All right. We are one circle back, and we're on to item D, if that's where you wish to go next, City Manager.
Yes, thank you. That's page 106, and that's the Border Fire and Police Commissioners. This is a volunteer group that is charged with the hiring process for our public safety employees. They're also charged with administering the exams for promotion and that would be the sergeants in the police department and the lieutenants and battalion chiefs on the fire side. And I know that there are tests coming up next year for, I believe, the sergeant's promotional exam in 2022. And so that, and then replacing fire and police candidates as they become vacant are the major expenses.
All right. Questions on this? Appear to be none.
Nope.
Oh,
Sorry.
Alderman Brennan.
Thanks, Mayor. City Manager, so 106, obviously, 3052 is, are those services to help with recruitment?
It would be services to help with recruitment, but also as part of the testing, the interview phase when we have, we administer psychological tests and drug screens.
So it's driven by the number of open spots, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right. Item E, page 108.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Ryan to talk about finance.
Thank you very much, City Manager Grabowski. I'll give a quick overview of some highlights of department operations, and then I'll get into a few highlights of specific line items I'd like to point out. This year, the Finance Department has continued to conduct a lot of analysis of revenue and expenditures, it's particularly in light of the ongoing pandemic, seeking ways to increase efficiencies and cost savings to the city. In conjunction with the Police Department and IT staff, back in March, we implemented the Dacratech ticketing and adjudication software, which has created operational efficiencies for both police and finance staff. In addition, we are currently working with the Fire Department and Human Resources on implementation of advanced scheduling within our existing ExecuTime time and attendance software, which will help us streamline scheduling and payroll processes for both the fire and finance staff. Also, in response to previously completed analysis of banking fees, finance staff are working to implement changes aimed at reducing the significant cost of banking fees to the city. Now, as far as a few line items I'd like to point out, the first would be full-time wages, 1001 on page 108. The proposed budget for 2022 reflects an approximately $200,000 decrease from the 2021 budget. This is due to a transfer of the positions for finance director and assistant finance director to a contractual services agreement with Lauterbach and Amon, which was approved by the council earlier in the year. There are also relevant decreases in the employee benefits. You'll see that IMRF costs, Social Security, and Medicare FICA costs, as well as health and dental insurance, see some marginal decreases associated with this. The other line item that is directly impacted by this change is 3092, also on page 108 for contract staffing. Here we reflect the other side, the increase, where we've budgeted the costs for that contractual services for those two positions. Banking expenses, which is account 3005, you'll note that there's a decrease projected for 2022 and 2023. This goes back to the aforementioned analysis of the banking fees, and we're looking to decrease these significantly through a few initiatives, such as implementation of a maximum credit card transaction fee, and by offering alternative payment options such as e-check, which have a lower processing cost to the city. I want to note, too, that these banking expenses are allocated. This is a portion, but there is also a portion of it allocated into the municipal utility fund and the parking funds. The final line item I'd like to point out is minor equipment, 4031, also on page 108. This includes an increase which is planned for the purchase of a new mail opener at an estimated cost of $4,000. And with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
You know, Ryan, first I want to thank you for jumping in. I don't think you were expected to be doing this if we went back, 5 months ago, and so I appreciate that. You're doing a great job at it.
Thank you very much.
The
Mr.
only
Mayor.
thing you might want to highlight before you open for questions is the possibility that we've gone from a Lauterbach and Amon contract to not necessarily, and maybe city manager, you want to address that before we get in, that it might be, in fact, a payroll line. Would it be transferred back? It might be contract.
So however we end up with our staffing model, what we've traditionally done in a department like this, as long as that bottom line balances out, we've been okay. So whether it's contract or full-time, and we're looking at both options right now with our timing just not working out on the Lauterbach side, or on the contract side. But hopefully we'll have some good news in short order.
Very good. All right. Questions, discussion? Well, let's see. Alderman Dunn.
Yeah, I want to echo what the mayor said about Ryan, Matt, and the rest of the finance team jumping in and pulling this budget together. I think it was maybe only a week or two later than we had planned months ago. So it's outstanding that you got this wonderful book together for us to go through for the next few weeks. My question is, again, back at the contract service personnel model versus the full-time. If I'm looking at the 2020, and this is on page 108, at the top of the page, salary and wages, and then the employee benefits. If I look at the 2020 versus the 2022, 2020 actual versus 2022 projected, it looks like we save about $220,000. I think you mentioned that, Ryan, in your opening discussion. But if we look down at that contract staffing, it was $11,000 in 2020 and almost $340 in projected for next year. So it's an increase of about $330. So there's a $110,000 increase in payroll expenses is what I'm seeing here, and that's not really what the Finance Committee reviewed and was under the impression that this was maybe a savings. So I'm not sure if you can elaborate on that now, or we need to do a circle back on that, but that's my question here.
Kiki's position also? Is that water billing position? Portion of Kiki's salary or contractual?
In contract staffing, yeah, there are, as the city manager is just pointed out to me, there are some other contract staff in that line item. As far as the 338, they are spread somewhat, so it's not 100% of the cost, but we do have other contract staff that are in the finance department that are partially allocated here. That would accommodate for part of that. But maybe we could take a closer look at this number and
sure,
get
yeah,
back to
you can
more
put
specific.
it as a circle back and get, try to map what that $110,000 discrepancy is.
Certainly.
Other discussion? Alderman Park?
Thank you. Wouldn't the discrepancy be that we're not paying health insurance or dental or social for the contract people?
That certainly is part of it and one of the benefits, but I think Chairman Dunn is comparing the wages line, and the benefits are on that next line, but that is one of the savings that we anticipate as we go through that, yeah.
Well, just to clarify, I'm looking at both the wages line dropping by about $200,000, and then the benefits line dropping by about $20,000.
Oh, pardon me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We will take a look at all of those and get back to the council with that. Thank you, Alderman Park.
Additional discussion? City Treasurer?
One thing on these banking expenses, we have these initiatives that we're speaking to. Any opportunity to, or maybe these are being implemented in fiscal year 21 to drive that potential estimated number down? Is that, any of these been implemented thus far?
We are working on that internally. Our hope is to have those implemented near the end of the year, and if not, certainly the beginning of next year. So there's a potential to, maybe start realizing some of those, although I wouldn't expect it would have a significant impact on the estimated number for 2021.
Okay. Any other questions on this topic? All right. We'll move on then to F, legal.
Thank you. This is pages 155 and 156. What I'd like to point out in this, so this is more than just City Attorney Storino's office. This involves our DUI prosecutions that we use a separate firm to do. And what I'd point out on that one is we do receive revenue back on DUI prosecutions. It's not necessarily a direct correlation year to year. I know we've gotten that question in the past. Can you point out how much revenue we've received? Because sometimes the DUI prosecutions take quite a bit of time to work their way through the system. The next item, Labor Council, that is City Attorney Storino's office, and we have 2 labor contracts to be negotiated this year, police and fire. So we anticipate an increase in that. The legal fees and additional counsel, we are looking at that, and Mayor, I think you have some comments to offer there. And then the prosecuting attorney for traffic is similar to the DUI prosecutions. That's a firm that is separate from Storino's firm.
Right. We did have a referral, which I think is probably ready to move forward in Finance Committee. I wanted to personally take a look at some of the expenses and review some of the bills, but I think that's going to be outside of our consideration of the budget. I will say that I feel that we've made significant demands on our legal counsel for all of the things we've had these years, including zoning cases like Roberto's, Sober House, labor issues. So we have been a big user of legal services, but I also believe from my professional perspective we've been well served by the firm. But that's my own personal commentary. And now, anyone else? Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question. There is a question earlier about our website. And my question relates to access to information. I'm curious to know if within the framework that we have with Storino's office, is there an opportunity to work with maybe a paralegal or a staff person to set up a different system for cataloging and organizing zoning cases, for example, or something on other things on board docs? I just think the more complicated cases we have, the more difficult it is, not just for the public, but for elected officials to search and sort and identify the information we're looking for.
Yes, of course, we can talk to them for any experience that they have. We've made some strides on board docs from what we first started with, but it can always be improved, and so we'll certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, G, claims, page 155. Nope.
So this is
7.
I'm sorry, page 157. This is an account that we use for claim payments, and it is based on prior year's experience as best we can do to try to budget that out.
This is the uninsured portion that the city pays. Questions? All right. Human Services, page 158.
Yes, thank you. Page 158. This involves a number of budgeted items. As you can see, the first one, the Senior Citizens Council grant, that is funds that go to Meals on Wheels program that we help to sponsor. The next line item, 6048, Seniors Assistance Program, is Metropolitan Family Services. We are talking with the Park District regarding the location of that. I think everyone knows they're housed here, or they office here, I should say, at City Hall. It was a recommendation of the Senior Citizens Commission, the City Commission, that we look at consolidating that with the other senior programming that the Park District has, and now that they will be moving forward with the new senior center at Centennial Park, I've been talking to the executive director about moving Metropolitan there so that people have one-stop shopping. The side benefit to that is it will open up some office space here at City Hall. Next item, self-explanatory, it's the taxi subsidy program that we use now. We had a couple different programs that we consolidated into this. Next item is Youth Commission. It's a very active commission, and we appreciate that. We have the chairman here with us, of course. And the city clerk, chairperson, and I had a conversation about budgeting and programs that they want to bring back. One of the big ones is some substance abuse programming for children and parents in town. And Chairwoman, City Clerk, if you want to expand on that, please do.
Thank you, City Manager Grabowski. We are planning to bring back fall of 2022 Chris Herron, the former NBA player with opiate addiction, and we brought him last in November 2016. We had an all-school assembly at York, and in the evening, 900 to 1,000 people attended in the community at the high school, and it was very well received with kids actually reaching out to Mr. Herron, and a good number of 30 some of them having immediate issues. So we thought it was very valuable. New kids, 5 years later, 6 years later at that point, 5 years later, coming back and bringing Mr. Herron back to the community, as well as going live again with the Job and Volunteer Fair, which would be a little bit more in the Exemplary Youth Service Awards, bringing everything back in person. So hopefully we can have your support. Thank you.
And the Chris Herron program is sponsored by a couple other groups in town?
So his expenses are actually much more, but we're partnering again with the District 205 Foundation and the PTA Council to split the expenses. It's in the works, and also bringing in some sponsorships like we did last time. So we're working to make sure our expenses stay reasonable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then last is the some dollars for the Senior Citizen Commission. They do, well, I think they're getting back to monthly coffees on Saturday with speakers. So we're happy to support them in that effort.
Thank you, City Manager. Questions? Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the Youth Commission, I see in 2019 is around 10,000, and 2022 and 2023 we're at 7,500. I don't know what the spend was prior to 2019, but is the 7,500? Are you limiting the program because of funding?
Because I don't have quite the numbers on me, but let me look back what you were talking about, 10,000. I believe we brought in a couple different bigger presenters that were in the range of a few thousand a couple times. I think that's why that number was where it was. Chris Herron does cost $12,500 plus expenses. So the reason why we're at a lower is because we're going to be splitting it with, like I said, the foundation and such. Some of those other numbers were big presentations that, like I said, they were actually coming. Some of them were going to the schools at that time, doing at the middle schools, and then different, like I said, in the evening at the community. Dr. Thompson, I think, was one of them back then, and he was a world-renowned author, and he came in and went to all the middle schools. So when we were doing stuff in schools as well as the community, it did cost a little bit more. So because this is a higher price tag, we do come and split it with other entities in town. And that's what we had done last time. Last time, Chris Herron was funded by a grant with the foundation, and then the council and us split the rest of it. So back then, we were, like I said, we were doing a lot more programming. It slowed down. We are able to bring some of the entities around, like we have something this Wednesday at York, discussion about increased of risky behaviors with teens. And that actually is no expense. We have Rosecrans coming, Eating Recovery Center coming. They're donating their time of being there. So we are able to pull some of those entities in for lower expenses as well. So I don't know if that answers.
No, it did. So it sounds like we're doing the programming that we want to do. And, you know, I think our youth are pretty important to our community. And I did go to a number of the programs when my kids were in school and found them extremely beneficial. So I was just curious if we're doing the programming that we want to do, or if what the program's constrained based on budget. So
I think it's trying to get creative with how to bring them into understanding what the year we were just coming out of. Like last year, we're all virtual with a lot of presenters donating their time locally.
Thank you. You do a great job with that, by the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question on the seniors taxi subsidies, so page 158, line 60-49. We are projecting in 2022 the same amount as the estimated in 2021, but that was less than the budgeted amount in 2021. I'm wondering if that's a fixed cost regardless of usage, or if that reflects a decline in usage if we pay by how much our seniors are using it.
Yeah, that's the Ride DuPage program that we went to, and I think we want to look into that to see if there is a baseline cost as you're asking. I suspect it's a decline in usage, but let us double check that.
Okay, and my follow-up question would be, I think we heard a little bit of feedback from seniors about the reliability of the program. So if we have seen a decrease in utilization, it'd be interesting to know if that's because there just is no demand, or there has been some degree of dissatisfaction.
I understand that Ride DuPage had some staffing issues in getting staff, not necessarily the quality, but getting people to drive, and that did generate some complaints that we're aware of. I did follow up on that with our staff, and looking back at our side of it, I don't know that we generated a lot of complaints out of Elmhurst. Some of our surrounding communities, as we went to the meetings, had a lot more complaints lodged than we did.
It'd be interesting to get some insights, how that money is being used, and is it producing the results we're looking for.
We will get that for you as a circle back.
Perfect, thanks.
Further discussion or questions? Alderman Dunn.
I know there's regarding the Veterans Commission, I know there's a referral in to maybe expand the scope of that. Does that fall under this group of items, or is that somewhere else?
Where's Veterans Commission? I suspect it's under a trusted agency fund. Sorry. Give us 1 minute, Alderman.
I'm sure we didn't forget it. I would think it'd be on
Yeah. Don't you know where there is, Jacob?
so, right.
This is actually your book.
Would that be page 103, City Manager?
What page?
103?
103.
Under administration, yeah. Other expenses. 60-56 on 103.
The Veterans Memorial.
Oh, it's part of fire, yeah, okay.
Yes, thank you, Alderman, that's correct.
Well, it's under administration.
Yes, under administration, on page 103, line item 6056.
Alderman Palumsky?
I don't know if this relates to the question, but the Memorial Day Parade, even though we think of it as a veterans event, is funded by the chamber. So I don't know if there's...
Well, we pay for that too.
Okay. But okay. All right. So ours, it's Alderman Mulliner saying it's under the visitor tourism, but the bulk of that, when we would review it, wasn't coming underneath like a veterans line item.
It's not really a veterans line item. It's more of a, actually wasn't a community grant, and then it went under. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still under visitor tourism. That'll be covered next week or as we get to that.
So it'll come up again. All right, other questions? All right, it is 10:57. You feel like you want to knock one more 3-minute off one, or should we just
My
knock?
clock shows 9:56.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe we need to
I forgot to change my,
change that.
what do you know?
I think we can get through these last two
Let's do it
fairly
then.
quickly.
Let's get that Dave Oberg energy and get this thing
Health
knocked
Services, page 160, as two items. It's the amount that we pay to Metro each month for the contract that we have. The contract that we have is much larger, but they do our insurance collection, and a majority of that comes from direct payments from insurance to Metro for those services, and then mosquito abatement each year.
And are that the insurance claim proceeds that's on page 91, or is that something else, the 808-01 on page 91?
Sorry, which line item, Mayor?
0801? No?
No, that would be general liability claims. In fact, that claim in 2019 was the broken water pipe at the police station.
Well, somehow we get a check for $100-something thousand every year, so it's more than this.
Yeah, that actually goes back to a previous question that I think Alderman Palumsky or Alderman Toledo had about the revenue side on that, and it was...
That's one of our circle backs already?
Yes, it's part of the circle backs.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. Other questions then? All right.
Last one for tonight is the transfers, interfund transfers. That is a lot for bond payments, but a significant one in there that we take notice of is the transfer to the stormwater fund from general. Pardon?
164.
Oh, I'm sorry, 164, line item 98-39. And so 2022, you see a significant increase. That is the anticipated tax levy that we are going to pick up to pay the stormwater debt in the next year that Finance Committee was talking about tonight.
All right, questions on transfers? All right, yeah, we got 30 seconds to spare.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to ask for a roll call on a motion to adjourn, and then I'm going to do it through a roll call. Alderman Brennan with the motion. Alderman Molnar, second. Clerk Tamer.
Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Bastido. Absent. Mulliner. Sorry, she must have left early. Aye. Brennan.
Aye.
Remus.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Palumski. Aye. Jensen.
Aye.
Studo. Aye. Cahill, absent. At adjournment, 12 present, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. We are adjourned. Thank you.